Hello, welcome in, Gamer Fiend here, and welcome to my new video. This is the Dead by Daylight glossary. This is going to be your go-to guide for all of the phrases and terms that are used within Dead by Daylight to all of the experienced players. We're going to be covering all sorts of stuff, so whether you're new to the game or pre-existing, if you are pre-existing, you're going to know quite a lot of these and probably have fallen victim to quite a lot of them too, but I'm hoping there's something in here for you. I hope you all enjoy, and let's get on to the first one. Right, first one's first. The first term we're going to cover is slugging. Now, for those of you that don't know, when you are slugged, that essentially means that you are left on the ground while the killer focuses on someone else, or maybe leaves you there to bleed out. This is a viable tactic in certain situations, depending on the killer's setup and what map they're on. But slugging essentially means that you're going to be left on the ground while they deal with another situation. And next up is everybody's favourite, the face camp. Now, it's going to be pretty obvious for a lot of people, but for those of you that don't know, the face camp is essentially when a killer hooks you and sits right in front of the hook to try and guard you for the kill. This is widely considered to be quote-unquote toxic, but to be quite honest, the killer is a killer and there is no nice way to kill somebody. So if you're being directly camped by a killer, that's referred to as a face camp. And up next is quite similar to the last one, but not quite as close. We have got proxying. Now, proxying is kind of the same as face camping, but proxying is when the killer patrols the area of the hook rather than directly in front of the hook itself. So if a killer goes to hook you and they might think a teammate of yours is around, they might proxy the area in order to try and secure the second down or scare away your teammate so that they can't unhook you. That is referred to as proxying. Up next is quite a nice and quick one, SWF, or commonly referred to as SWF. This is essentially when you're playing with one or more friends. So a SWF is literally, if you invited your friend in and you're playing together, you would be referred to as a SWF, survive with friends. Another nice and quick one, KYF. This is quite similar to the last one, but this is kill your friends. This is what you would say if you were inviting your friends into a custom match. So if I were to say to you to use a kill your friends match to practice your skills, KYF, kill your friends, that is when you're playing with your friends in a private match. Up next, we've got Killer Shack. Now, Killer Shack is an area of a map where the killer has a shack and sometimes there's a basement within it. There's a window, there's usually a pallet as well. It's quite a popular loot location. Killer Shacks aren't on every single map. For example, Midwich doesn't ever have a Killer Shack, but Killer Shack is essentially a hut with a window and a pallet that the survivors can use to loot, and sometimes there may be a basement there for the killer to hook. Up next, we've got Hatch, or Get Hatch, or for that matter, any variation of the term Hatch. When you get towards the end game of a game of Dead by Daylight, whether your friends have all died, whether you've got the generators done but you haven't actually managed to escape yet, whatever the situation be, if you're the last remaining survivor alive, the hatch will open for you to jump through and escape. Now, you have to find it, and the killer can also find it, so it's kind of a race against time as to which one of you gets it first. But if you hop through the hatch, you can escape through the game immediately without having to open a gate. So when anybody says hatch, they're referring to the end game escape method. Up next, we've got looping, or just loops. Loops is literally just a term referred to for running the killer around. So while the killer is chasing you, you are trying to buy as much time as possible for your teammates to push generators. This is referred to as looping. You can loop around a pallet, you can loop around Killer Shack. It's literally just when you're running a killer around to try and buy some time. Up next is one that took me a while to get. I didn't know this was a thing people referred to in the early days of me playing DBD. 3-gen. Now, a 3-gen essentially refers to a very tough situation. When you complete a certain amount of generators, you will get to a point where there is one of 3 generators you'll need to complete. If 3 of those generators are close to each other and the killer has an opportune patrol path, that is referred to as an awkward 3-gen, or just a 3-gen. So you've got to be careful as to which generators you complete in which order. Up next, we've got 99 the gate, or just 99 it. Now, when you get towards the end game and the gates are finally powered, once all 5 generators are complete, you can do something called 99 in a gate. If one of your teammates is being chased in the end game and you want to try and save them, as soon as you pull that gate handle and open the gate, it will immediately start the end game collapse, giving them a timer to get out of the game, otherwise they're going to die. If you 99 the gate, which refers to pulling the handle just until the progress bar is just below the final point, that essentially stops the end game from starting, and you're able to go and get your friends away from the hook, or maybe buy some time from the killer. So essentially, 99 in a gate is a technique you can use to try and buy a little bit more time to save your friends. Up next, we've got Adept. Now, these are slightly different between killers and survivors, but for a survivor, it essentially means that you have to escape by any method, whether it be the gate or the hatch, using only those survivors' 3 perks. It's fairly simple with survivors. With killer, the Adept requires them to get 2 pips whilst using only their 3 killer perks. This doesn't necessarily mean the 4K though. I have got killer Adepts without getting the 4K, but the Adept essentially refers to getting 2 pips with killer or an escape as a survivor using only their 3 perks that are given to them. Up next, we've got BNP, which stands for Brand New Part. This is an add-on you can bring for a toolbox. A brand new part will give you a big chunk of progress for 2 skill checks. So when you add a brand new part to a toolbox and you're using the toolbox to repair a generator, you will get 2 hard skill checks. If you hit them, you get a nice chunk of progress extra on top. So BNP equals brand new part, which is an add-on for the toolbox. Up next, we've got Death Hook. So Death Hook refers to the fact that you'll be on your final hook before death. I know this sounds kind of obvious, but it's not something everybody might know. So as a survivor, you've got 3 hook states. One hook state is essentially the very first introduction hook. You will get put on hook, you can get taken off and everything's fine. Second hook state is where your skill checks will begin whilst you're on hook. So if you get hooked a second time by the killer, you will need to continually hit skill checks until your teammate gets you off the hook. And then once you're put on for the third and final hook state, you will be immediately killed and taken by the entity to the end game. Up next is DS, which stands for Decisive Strike. This is a perk that comes from Laurie Strode. It's a survivor perk. If the killer hooks you once, and then you get unhooked by a friend and the killer goes for you again, once you come off of the hook, you will have a 60-second window. If the killer downs you within this window and picks you up, you will be given a skill check. If you hit that skill check, you'll be able to immediately wiggle off of the killer's shoulder. That is the perk Decisive Strike. Up next, we've got DH, which stands for Dead Hard. Now, this is a perk from David King. Essentially, what Dead Hard does is allows you to trigger a state of endurance on the press of the active ability button. For example, if you're on a chase with the killer and you're injured, you can use Dead Hard, the active ability button, in order to avoid an insta-down from the killer. So if the killer swings for you and you press your active ability button and activate Dead Hard, you will essentially be able to sponge that hit and continue running. And up next is Exposed. Now, there are many things that can expose you in this game. For example, I'm going to use Ghostface. So when you're being stalked by Ghostface, if they fully stalk you, you gain an exposed status effect. While you're exposed, it means even if you're at full health, you will only be a 1-hit down, whereas usually the killer has to hit you twice to down you. When you're exposed, it is a 1-hit even if you are full. So just be wary whilst you're exposed. Up next is farming. Now, for those of you that don't know, farming is essentially when a killer is using you to build up their blood point tally. If you're in a game and 1 or 2 of your survivors disconnects and you're one of only 2 remaining, you may find that the killer comes up to you and seemingly is friendly, leading you to pallets and letting you stun them. This is referred to as farming. This essentially allows you to get some blood points from a game where you wouldn't necessarily have got some otherwise. And now we've got Gen Rush. This one might seem fairly obvious, but Gen Rush is literally Generator Rush. Now, a survivor's main objective in this game is to complete 5 generators, open the gate, and escape. A lot of people will say that Gen Rushing is bad. Pay absolutely no attention. You are literally just completing your main objective. Gen Rush equals completing your objective quickly. Up next, we've got LT Wall, or LNT. This is essentially a loop area with 2 walls, one of them shaped like a T and one of them shaped like an L. They're usually very close to each other, and there's 2 windows, one on the T and one on the L. It's essentially just a loop area that you can run the killer around and hop the windows. Just be wary when you're doing this though, because if the killer has a perk like Bamboozle, they can block one of the windows, making the LET quite ineffective. Up next, we've got Moonwalking. Now, you will eventually get to a point in this game where the killers become savvy to survivors' techniques. So killers counter this by doing something called Moonwalking. Now, when you play as a killer, you have a red stain in front of you. When you moonwalk, it essentially means you're walking backwards with the red stain facing the opposite way around a loop. Sometimes the survivors look out for this red stain, so moonwalking can hide the red stain and allow you to get closer to the survivor without them realizing that you're there. Up next, we've got tunneling. Now, tunneling is a term referred to when killers repeatedly target the same survivor. This, for some reason, is seen as a very, very bad thing in this game. I get that it can be kind of annoying, but going back to what I said earlier, killing is killing, and there is no nice way to kill someone. Tunneling essentially means if you have been hooked by the killer and they immediately go for you again, that would be what you refer to as being tunneled or tunneling. And that's your lot. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was some help to at least some people. If there was any here you think I've missed that you think I might need to add, please leave them in the comments below. And we are unbelievably close to 1,000 subs, and by the time this goes out we may have hit it. I'm not actually sure. It's going incredibly fast. Thank you all so much for the incredible support. Thank you very, very much. If you haven't already, please consider hitting subscribe. It helps me out massively. And hit like on the video. I mean, do what you want, but please consider it. Thank you very, very much, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out. Much love.